Today, we'll be exploring true facts about the muscular system. The body is made of 3 different types of muscles: skeletal, smooth, and cardiac. But we don't really care about smooth and cardiac because they're boring and do everything themselves. So yeah, skeletal muscle. Like you'd expect, skeletal muscles are attached to the bones in our bodies by tendons and are responsible for all of our voluntary movements like walking or punching someone in the face. Skeletal muscles are either flexors or extensors. Flexors bring connected bones closer together while extensors push them apart. Skeletal muscles are made of long muscle fibers that have hundreds of nuclei per cell, and each muscle fiber contains thousands of little myofibrils that carry out muscle contraction. Muscle fibers are fusiform in shape, meaning that they look like some idiot who got his finger stuck in a Chinese finger trap. And I mean really stuck. The membrane of a muscle cell is called the sarcolemma, and they contain a different cytoplasm called the sarcoplasm. They also have a modified endoplasmic reticulum called the sarcoplasmic reticulum, which gathers and holds onto milk molecules for special signals later on. There are regions at the end of the sarcoplasmic reticulum called terminal cisternae that connect with transverse tubules or T-tubules. T-tubules are basically like little wormholes that live in your muscles and help action potentials move more rapidly through the interior of the muscle fiber and reach the terminal cisternae simultaneously. Sometimes when you're jogging a little too hard, you'll injure some of your muscle cells, and that's where satellite cells come in. Satellite cells are nearby stem cells that activate when they are needed to help muscles repair or grow. They're kind of like that person you're such good friends with when tests are coming up. Once you get all their notes, you just don't talk to them anymore for some reason. Myosin is a pretty special motor protein that helps create movement. Each myosin molecule has a heavy protein chain as well as the heavy chain's wimpy little brother that he just couldn't leave at home by himself. Different types of myosin are found throughout the body and help determine the speed of a muscle's contraction. When about 250 molecules combine, they form thick filaments. Actin is a protein that makes chains known as F-actin that twist together like some wannabe DNA helix to form thin filaments of myofibrils. Cross bridges of myosin form between these thin filaments. This is the part where actin and myosin unleash their inner spoiled cats because they don't like to be touched in one spot. Otherwise they can't bind to each other and form a cross bridge. Man, I hate cats. Now, if you're bored one day and have to be looking at muscles under a light microscope, you'll see that the filaments create alternating light and dark bands called sarcomeres. Sarcomeres contain 2 Z-discs that serve as the attachment site for thin filaments. The Z comes from the German word zwischen, which means between. This is also the sound a German basketball makes when it goes through the hoop.
Zwischen.
I bands are the lightest bands occupied only by thin filaments, where the I stands for isotropic because the region reflects light uniformly. Z-discs run through the middle of each I band, meaning that each half of an I band belongs to a different sarcomere. Next are the A bands, which are the darker sarcomere bands. The center of the band is called the H zone and is only occupied by thick filaments, while the outer edge are home to both thick and thin filaments. The A comes from anisotropic, meaning that the protein fibers are too cool to scatter light evenly. Lastly is the M line, which is basically the Z-disc but for thick filaments, and it divides A bands in half. Now, to keep all those filaments aligned, your body has titin and nebulin. Titin is the god of the protein world and it's made of over 25,000 frickin' amino acids. It's pretty darn big, right? It uses its godlike powers to bully and stabilize contractile filaments, return stretched muscle to its original length. Next is the other big sounding protein, nebulin, which is actually nothing more than an oversized boil attached to a Z-disc and keeps the actin filaments aligned. Now, muscle contraction is a remarkable process along the lines of the miracle of birth, and it allows us to move stuff. Simply amazing. The term for the force caused by muscle contraction is muscle tension. Like every other process in our body that needs energy, muscle contraction calls up ATP and mooches off all of its free energy. Muscle contractions are triggered by troponin, which controls an elongated protein polymer called tropomyosin. In resting skeletal muscle, tropomyosin aggressively spoons the actin filaments, covering all of its myosin binding sites. and unless you give that troponin some milk molecules, the tropomyosin ain't going nowhere. Once the troponin gets its milk, a special protein called troponin C binds to the milk molecules, pulling the tropomyosin leech off of the binding sites. With the binding sites open, the myosin can now unleash its secret hidden move, the power stroke, where it pushes actin filaments to the center of the sarcomere for a contraction. Proprioception is the ability of our bodies to sense the position of our limbs in space, our movements, and the effort we exert when lifting objects. Proprioception gives us the most superior sense of balance in the entire animal kingdom, allowing us to hold any position with ease. In fact, let's have a demonstration. Have you ever tried to balance on one foot, look up, and close your eyes? Try it, it's easy. Just kidding. All it really does is make you look like an idiot. Proprioceptors are what give us our spatial awareness, and they're located in our skeletal muscles, joint capsules, and ligaments. So let's say you're hanging around one day when a book decides to magically fall from the sky and fall towards you. Now, your muscular system and sense of proprioception would be there for you. The skeletal muscle reflex would react to the falling book of death and tense up your muscles so you'd catch the book. No harm done. This is surprisingly more anticlimactic than I thought it would be. Anyways, your muscle spindles are the stretch receptors that tell your brain the length by which your muscles have stretched. This info will then create a stretch reflex which would tighten up your muscles so that the book doesn't fall and smash your delicate little feet. But if it were, say, an anvil like in Looney Tunes instead of the book, you wouldn't be strong enough to hold it up, and your Golgi tendon organs would instinctively relax your muscles so that the anvil doesn't rip your arm off. Fatigue is what happens when your body decides that that girl at the gym just isn't worth trying to impress anymore, so it gives up. Fatigue is hard to measure, and it really depends on the intensity and duration of a contraction. Fatigue can be divided into central fatigue mechanisms that come from the central nervous system and peripheral fatigue mechanisms that come from the neuromuscular junction in the muscles, and it's thought to be caused by the depletion of glycogen reserves in your muscles. So basically, central fatigue is when R. Kelly's mind is telling him no, and peripheral fatigue is when his body is also telling him no. Studies have shown that central fatigue happens before peripheral fatigue, and this is because your brain is always looking out for you, no matter how many times it makes you live through those awkward moments of middle school. So, remember kids, if someone ever makes fun of you for not knowing how the skeletal muscular system works, just punch them in the face and prove them wrong.